The silver starship moved slowly through Earth's orbit, shining like a piece of glass against the black sky. On board was Zira, an alien diplomat from the peaceful world of Vera. Her people were known across the stars as calm, logical, and always balanced. They believed in harmony above all things. Anger, shouting, or fighting were not just strange to them. They were forbidden. Zira stood by the wide window, staring at the planet below. Blue oceans, green lands, and white clouds spun together in a beautiful dance. To her eyes, Earth looked peaceful. But she had read the reports. She had seen the news. Humans were different. Humans argued, they fought wars, they even enjoyed something they called sports, where one human tried to defeat another. This idea shocked her. On Vera, children were raised to avoid conflict. Here on Earth, children played games where one side had to win and the other had to lose. To Zira, it looked like humans lived in constant competition. They seemed hungry for challenge, ready to attack at the smallest reason. Her mission was simple: understand the humans and create peace between their worlds. But the more she studied them, the more questions grew in her mind. How could a race that loved conflict also build art, music, and dreams? How could they reach the stars if they were always fighting each other? The door behind her slid open. A human officer entered wearing the dark blue uniform of Earth's Star Command. He bowed slightly, trying to be polite. "Ambassador Zira," he said, "the council is ready to receive you." Zira nodded, her long silver hair moving like water around her shoulders. She followed the officer down the bright hallway, but her thoughts stayed heavy. She had heard whispers about one human in particular, a man named Captain Aric Kane. Aric was said to be brilliant, but also dangerous. In battles, he pushed his crew beyond their limits. He made fast, bold decisions that looked reckless to outsiders, but somehow always brought victory. Other diplomats from different species called him too aggressive. Some even called him a war machine. Zira wondered, how could someone like that be trusted with peace? The council chamber was wide, filled with glowing screens and banners of the human alliance. Generals and leaders sat in high chairs, but it was the man standing near the center that caught Zira's eyes. Broad-shouldered, with a scar cutting across his cheek, Captain Aric looked exactly as the rumors described. His posture was sharp, his gaze steady, his very presence heavy like a storm waiting to break. For a moment, Zira froze. She felt something she had never felt before, an uneasy mix of fear and fascination. Aric noticed her and gave a short nod, not a bow. His eyes studied her like she was another battlefield to read. "Welcome to Earth," he said, his voice deep, almost commanding. "I hope you are ready to see what we truly are." Zira kept her expression calm, but inside her heart moved quickly. There it was again, that strange human energy. Aggression, not wild and uncontrolled, but sharp, focused, like a blade. She had come here to understand it, but already she wondered if she had made a mistake. The council began the meeting, voices rising as humans debated trade, security, and treaties. Zira listened, but she could not stop glancing at Aric. Every time he spoke, the others listened. His words were strong, and even when someone disagreed, he did not back away. He leaned forward, pushed harder, until his point stood firm. To her people, such behavior would be shameful. Yet here, it won him respect. After the meeting ended, Zira stepped into the hall. Aric was waiting there, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. His eyes held a challenge. "You think we are violent savages, don't you?" he asked. Zira opened her mouth, but no words came. He smiled faintly, but it was not a warm smile. "Stay with me on one mission," he said. "Watch with your own eyes. Then decide what humans really are." She wanted to refuse. Every part of her training told her to stay away. But deep inside, a spark of curiosity lit up. She had come to understand humans, and this man, this aggressive captain, was the perfect example. Zira lifted her chin. "Very well, Captain. I will watch." For a second, something flickered in his gaze. Respect? Amusement? She could not tell. But as she walked away, she realized her heart was beating faster than usual, and in that moment, Zyra knew two things. First, that humans were more complicated than she had imagined. Second, that Captain Aric Kane was going to change her life forever. The docking bay was loud with human voices, boots striking metal floors, and machines humming. Zyra stepped carefully, down the ramp of the council ship, her long silver cloak flowing behind her. Every sound felt sharp to her ears. On Vera, there was always silence, soft and calm. Here, everything seemed alive and restless. She noticed how the humans moved, fast, hurried, as if time was chasing them. Even their laughter sounded like small bursts of battle cries. She reminded herself to stay calm. She was here to learn, not to judge. But deep inside, unease grew stronger, and then she saw him again. Captain Aric Kane stood at the far end of the bay, speaking with two officers. He wore a dark uniform with silver marks on his shoulders, showing rank. His presence filled the space as though the walls bent slightly toward him. His voice was low, but every word was firm, shaped like a command. When his eyes turned toward her, she froze. Zyra had faced many leaders, warriors, even kings in her travels. None had ever made her heart stumble. Aric's gaze was steady, sharp and unafraid. It was not cruel, but it held a strange fire, something she had never seen in her people. The officers left, and Aric walked toward her. His boots echoed with confidence. "Ambassador Zyra," he said, inclining his head just slightly. Not a bow, not submission, but recognition. "I hear you'll be joining us." "Yes," Zyra answered, her voice soft but clear. "I have agreed to observe your mission." Aric studied her, and she felt as though his eyes cut past her words, searching deeper. He smiled faintly, though it was not gentle. "Observation is one thing. Understanding is another. Let's see how far you're willing to go." His words stung. To her people, diplomacy was built on respect, but this man spoke like a challenger, not a partner. Yet there was no insult in his tone, only blunt honesty. "I came to learn," she replied, "not to fight." "Then you're already half blind," Aric said, "because sometimes learning requires both." Before she could ask what he meant, the ship's alarm sounded, a sharp, metallic ring. Humans around them rushed to stations. Voices shouted orders. Lights flashed red across the bay. Zyra's heart quickened. "What is happening?" "Drill," Aric said calmly, though his steps quickened. "Pirate raid simulation. We train like it's real, because one day it will be." He gestured for her to follow. Against her instincts, she did. The corridors of the ship came alive. Humans moved fast, but not without purpose. Every person seemed to know their role. Every shout connected to another. To Zyra, it looked like chaos. But she realized it was organized chaos, like storm winds spinning in one direction. Aric stopped at the command deck. Screens lit up with glowing maps, red dots marking enemy ships. His officers looked tense but ready. "Engage formation," Aric ordered. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone moved instantly. Zyra stood in the corner, trying to understand. His words were harsh, almost aggressive, but his people did not resist. They obeyed him, and not from fear, there was trust in their eyes. "Fire cannons on mark," Aric shouted. The ship shook as simulated blasts filled the air. Zyra flinched. Her people avoided weapons even in training. To see humans treat destruction like routine practice unsettled her. But what unsettled her more was the calmness on Aric's face. He stood tall, giving commands with focus, not panic. His aggression was not wild. It was precise, directed. The drill ended with cheers from the crew. Aric gave a nod, nothing more. The celebration was theirs, not his. Zyra walked closer, her voice low. "Why must you practice war when there is no war?" Aric turned to her, expression steady. "Because peace does not stay by itself, it must be protected. Aggression is not the enemy, Ambassador. Fear is. If we fear too much to fight, we lose everything." His words made her silent. They carried weight she could not ignore. On Vera, peace was law. But here, peace was a fragile shield that could break without strength behind it. For the first time, Zyra wondered if her people had misunderstood humans. Maybe their aggression was not just hunger for battle. Maybe it was something more, a survival flame. Still, she did not admit this aloud. Instead, she said, "Your methods seem dangerous. To live always prepared for violence, is that not exhausting?" Aric's mouth curved in a faint smile. "It is exhausting, but it keeps us alive. You'll see soon enough." The alarms went silent. The crew returned to normal duties, laughter rising again as though nothing had happened. But Zyra's mind was far from calm. She had expected Captain Aric to be reckless, perhaps cruel. Instead, she saw a man who carried aggression like a weapon, sharp but controlled, and for reasons she could not explain, that control intrigued her. As she left the command deck, she realized something else. Her mission was no longer only about understanding humans. It was about understanding this one man whose fire seemed both dangerous and strangely magnetic. And deep in her chest, she felt the first quiet spark of fear, not of him, but of herself. The stars stretched endless outside the ship's wide windows, shining like cold fires. Zyra sat silently in the observation lounge, her long hands folded in her lap. She had never left her homeworld for something like this before. Diplomats of Vera were trained for calm meetings, for soft words and silent rooms. They were never asked to ride inside warships, never asked to stand near men like Captain Aric. Yet here she was. The ship hummed with life around her. Humans moved with energy, quick footsteps echoing on metal floors, voices rising and falling as they spoke through comms. Every sound carried urgency. It was so different from her world, where silence was a treasure and movement was measured like music. Her thoughts broke when the doors slid open. "Ambassador," Aric's voice called. She turned. He stood in the doorway, broad shoulders blocking, the light behind him. His expression was calm but unreadable, his eyes fixed on her as though he could see every thought she tried to hide. "It's time," he said. Zyra stood, lifting her cloak around her. "Time for what?" Aric gave a small smile that did not reach his eyes. "For your lesson. You wanted to understand us. Now you will." He led her through the corridors until they reached the command deck. The room glowed with screens and controls, a storm of colors flashing across black panels. Officers sat at their stations, their faces tense but focused. On the largest screen, a map displayed red markers. Enemy ships. "Pirates," one officer reported. "They've been harassing colony routes for weeks. This is their main nest." Zyra frowned. "And what will you do?" Aric's jaw tightened, slightly. "What we always do. Protect our people." The ship accelerated, stars blurring outside. The hum deepened into a steady roar. Zyra gripped the railing, her heart uneasy. She had expected to observe quiet diplomacy, not battle. When the pirate ships appeared, her breath caught. They were jagged, dark vessels with glowing red engines. They moved like predators circling prey. "Shields up," Aric barked. His voice filled the room, sharp and strong. The crew answered without hesitation, fingers flying over controls. To Zyra, it looked like madness. So much noise, so much movement. Orders were shouted, alarms flashed, and the ship shook as enemy fire struck their shields. Yet there was order inside the storm. Aric stood tall in the center, his hands behind his back. His eyes locked on the battle screen. He gave commands quickly, never doubting, never pausing. His aggression was not wild. It was precise, like a blade in skilled hands. "Return fire. Target their engines." The ship roared as cannons lit the darkness with white fire. Explosions flashed across the enemy hull. Zyra flinched, her body trembling. On her world, such destruction would be unthinkable, but here, it was survival. The pirate ship swarmed closer, firing in waves. The floor trembled beneath her feet. Smoke hissed from broken panels. Crew members shouted warnings. Through it all, Aric did not falter. "Hold formation," he ordered. "Stay on them, push them back." Zira's eyes darted between the chaos and the man at its center. For the first time, she saw the strange beauty of human aggression. It was not rage, it was focus, courage, and willpower shaped into action. One officer shouted, "Captain, shields at 20%. "Hold," Aric snapped. "We're not done yet." The ship spun hard, engines screaming as it dove through the enemy line. Zira stumbled, catching herself on the railing. Her heart pounded wildly, fear mixing with something else. Excitement. For a brief moment she felt what the humans felt. The thrill of danger, the rush of standing against impossible odds. The cannons fired again and one pirate ship burst into flames. Cheers rose from the crew. Zira stared at the burning wreck through the window, stunned. The battle raged on, but slowly the pirates began to retreat. Their engines flared as they turned away, fleeing into the dark. "Hold pursuit," Aric ordered. His voice was steady, but his eyes were hard. "Let them run. We'll finish this another day." The crew relaxed, laughter breaking out across the deck. The red lights faded and the ship's hum softened back to normal. Zira released a long breath she had not realized she was holding. Her hands shook slightly. Aric turned to her, his face unreadable. "Well, Ambassador, you wanted to see what we are." She looked at him, words caught in her throat. She had expected chaos, destruction without reason. Instead, she had seen control within fire, order within aggression. "You fight," she whispered. "Not only to destroy, but to protect." A shadow of a smile crossed his face. "Now you're beginning to understand." As he turned away to speak with his officers, Zira felt something new stirring inside her. Fear, yes, but also fascination. The humans were dangerous. But maybe, just maybe, their danger was the reason they survived when so many others had fallen. And deep in her heart, she realized she wanted to see more. The ship drifted quietly through the stars after the battle, its engines humming like a tired heart. Smoke still lingered in the air, the scent of burned circuits mixing with the sharp bite of metal. Crew members moved slowly now, repairing panels and speaking in softer tones. The danger had passed, but the memory of it still clung to the walls. Zira walked the corridor in silence, her cloak brushing against the steel floor. Her mind was heavy, replaying the chaos she had witnessed. Explosions, fire, shouts. Every sound had felt like a storm crashing inside her chest. On Vera, such chaos would never exist. Yet these humans had not only endured it, they had thrived inside it. And at the center of it all was Captain Aric. She found him in the strategy chamber, standing over a glowing table filled with star charts. His scarred face was lit by the soft, blue glow of the maps. He looked calm, almost too calm for someone who had just led his crew through fire. "You don't rest?" Zira asked, stepping closer. Aric glanced at her, then back to the maps. "Rest comes after victory. We're not there yet." His words puzzled her. "But you won. The pirates fled. They'll be back," he said simply. "Aggression doesn't stop. You cut off one head, another grows. If you want peace, you prepare for war. Always." Zira frowned. The word aggression hung in her thoughts like a shadow. To her, aggression was reckless and ugly. Yet she had seen his crew look at him, with respect, not fear. She had seen them cheer, even laugh after facing death. "Why do they follow you?" she asked quietly. "You push them into danger, you risk their lives." Aric finally raised his eyes to her. They were sharp, but not cruel. "Because they know I'll stand with them. Because they know I'll fight harder than anyone to bring them home." Zira hesitated. His voice carried no arrogance, only certainty. She realized then that his aggression was not just violence. It was also loyalty. A fire not only to destroy, but to protect. Still, fear twisted in her. "But isn't there another way, talking, reasoning? Couldn't you convince these pirates with words instead of weapons?" Aric gave a short laugh, though there was no humor in it. You can't reason with wolves when they're already biting your throat. Words work only when both sides want peace. Pirates want power. If we show weakness, more innocents die. Zira lowered her gaze. On Vera, conflict was solved with logic and patience. But perhaps that was because no one on her world was hungry, desperate, or cruel. Humans lived with danger she had never imagined. For a long moment, the room was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Then Aric spoke again, softer this time. You think aggression is only about hate. It's not. It's courage. It's the force that makes us run into fire when everyone else runs away. Without it, we'd be extinct. Zyra's breath caught. His words pierced her, deep and unsettling. Could it be that aggression was not only destruction, but survival? Could it be that humans needed this fire to live in such a dangerous galaxy? Her voice was barely above a whisper. And you carry this fire all the time? Aric's jaw tightened. I carry it so my people don't have to. That's the burden of command. Something stirred inside her chest. It was not only fear now. It was something heavier, something warmer, though she did not dare name it. Before she could speak again, the ship's alarm blared. Red lights flashed across the chamber. The intercom crackled with urgency. Captain, new contact! Enemy vessel approaching, larger than before! Aric's face hardened. They didn't run far, he muttered. He turned to her, his voice sharp. Stay with me. You wanted to understand us? You'll understand now. Zyra followed as he strode back to the command deck. Her heart pounded, not just from fear of the enemy ship, but from the storm inside her own mind. She had come to study humans, to write a report about their strange aggression. But now she realized something dangerous. She was no longer only studying them. She was beginning to feel their fire herself, and as the enemy vessel loomed on the screen, massive, bristling with weapons, she wondered what that fire would make her do next. The command deck glowed red, alarms pulsing like a heartbeat. On the main screen, the enemy vessel grew larger, its black surface lined with weapons that glimmered like fangs in the dark. It was double the size of Aric's ship, maybe more. Zyra's throat tightened. She had seen pirates before, but never anything like this. The enemy ship looked less like a vessel and more like a beast from a nightmare. The crew shifted nervously at their stations. One officer whispered, Captain, their firepower could crush us. Aric's eyes never left the screen, his voice was steady. That's why we don't let them fire first. His words made Zyra flinch. You mean to fight? Against that? Aric turned to her, his expression sharp but calm. If we run, they'll hunt us. If we surrender, they'll take everything. So yes, we fight. The crew stiffened at his words, but no one argued. Zyra could see fear in their eyes, yet beneath it was something stronger. Trust. They believed in him. Target their engines, Aric ordered. We'll cut their claws first. The ship shook as cannons fired, bright streaks of light crossing the void. The enemy answered with a blast that slammed against their shields. The floor trembled. Sparks burst from a panel, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. Zyra gripped the railing, her heart pounding. Every instinct in her screamed to run, to hide. Yet Aric stood firm in the storm, his voice a steady anchor. Hold formation, keep pressure on their flank. The crew obeyed, voices raised, hands moving fast. To Zyra, it still looked like chaos, but now she saw the pattern inside it. Each command from Aric was like a drumbeat guiding them through the noise. His aggression wasn't rage, it was rhythm. Strength turned into order. Another explosion shook the ship. The lights flickered. Someone cried out in pain as a panel sparked. Medical team, Aric barked, not losing focus. His eyes flicked, across the deck, taking in everything at once. Zyra's chest tightened. She saw his determination, the fire that burned in him. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also beautiful. Captain, an officer shouted. Their main cannon charging. On the screen, the enemy ship's core glowed, energy building for a devastating strike. Shields won't hold, another warned. Zyra turned to Aric, panic rising. You must surrender. If you don't, everyone will die. Aric faced her, his gaze burning. We don't surrender, not because we hate them, because we love the people we protect. The word struck her like a blade and a balm at once. She had never heard aggression described as love before, yet in his voice, it was truth. Evasive maneuvers, Aric commanded. The ship twisted hard, engines roaring. The blast grazed past them, missing by only meters. The entire deck shook, alarms screaming. But they survived. Now, Aric shouted. Hit their cannon before they recharge. The crew fired. Explosions ripped across the enemy ship, tearing open its weapon banks. Flames spilled into the void. Cheers erupted on the deck, but Aric's face remained stern. Don't relax. They still have teeth. The enemy vessel turned, its engines burning brighter. But it was slower now, wounded. Aric saw the weakness before anyone else. Push forward, he growled. Finish this. The crew obeyed, their fear now transformed into fierce energy. The ship surged ahead, every weapon firing. The enemy ship cracked under the assault, flames blooming across its hull until it broke apart, scattering into silent debris. The deck erupted in victory shouts. Officers clapped shoulders, laughter filled the air. Relief spread like sunlight, after storm. Sira stood frozen. Her breath came fast, her heart racing. She had just seen death so close and survival even closer. Aric turned to her. His face was calm, but his eyes still carried that fire. Now you see, he said quietly. Aggression isn't just destruction. It's the strength to stand when no one else will. It's the will to protect. Sira looked at him, her throat tight. She wanted to argue, to remind him of her people's laws, their peace. But the words would not come, because deep inside, she had felt it too. The rush, the courage, the fire. And what frightened her most was that she did not only admire it. She admired him. Her eyes lingered on him longer than they should have, studying the scar on his cheek, the steady set of his jaw. She wondered how many battles he had fought, how many lives he had saved. And for the first time, she realized she wanted to know not just what made humans fight, but what made this man fight. The thought unsettled her. Diplomats were trained to stay neutral, untouched by emotion. Yet her heart was no longer neutral. It beat faster when he was near. Aric turned back to his crew, giving more orders, but his words blurred in her ears. Zira's mind was trapped between fear and something more dangerous. Desire. The battle had ended, but inside her, a different kind of battle had just begun. The ship floated through the quiet dark, but the silence was thin, uneasy. The crew worked quickly to repair the damage, patching broken panels and sealing ruptured lines. Victory had been theirs, but the scars of battle still burned across the vessel. Zira walked slowly along the corridor, her steps echoing. Her heart was unsettled, her thoughts tangled. She had seen death so close, fire so bright, and humans running headlong into danger without hesitation. And she had seen Aric at the center of it all, unshaken, unyielding, his will holding the crew together like steel. She stopped before the wide observation window. The stars outside glimmered softly, as if mocking the storm she had just lived through. On Vera, she would have meditated, calmed her spirit with silence, but now, silence felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. The door behind her hissed open. "Ambassador," came Aric's voice. She turned. He looked tired, the scar on his cheek darker in the dim light. His uniform bore marks of smoke and his posture carried the strain of command, yet his eyes still burned with that unshakable fire. "You should rest," she said softly. He shook his head. "I rest when my crew does, not before." For a moment they stood in silence, the stars between them. Then Aric stepped closer. "You saw it today. You felt it. The fire we carry. It frightened you, didn't it?" Zira hesitated, then nodded. "It still does. And yet," Aric said, studying her face, "you're still here. Most would have begged to leave after seeing what we do." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She had wanted to leave. Every part of her training screamed at her to leave, but her heart betrayed her. It whispered that she had to stay. that she had to understand more, that she had to understand him. Before she could speak, the ship's alarm blared again. Red lights flashed along the corridor. "Captain," a voice cried over the intercom. "Another wave. Multiple enemy ships inbound." Aric's jaw tightened. He tapped his comm. "Battle stations." Then his eyes turned to her. "Stay behind. Me this time." Zyra's breath quickened. More enemies? After all they had endured? The idea of facing another storm of fire made her blood run cold. Yet the crew rushed to their stations, fear on their faces but also determination. On the command deck, the main screen filled with red blips, dozens of pirate vessels closing in, far more than before. "This isn't a raid," an officer whispered. "This is a hunt." Aric stood tall. "Then let's make them choke on their hunt." The ship shook as the first blasts struck their shields. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and smoke poured from broken panels. The crew fought desperately to keep control. Syrah clutched the railing, her body trembling. The chaos swallowed her. Fear roared inside her mind. She wanted to hide, to escape into silence, but then her eyes found Aric. He stood in the center of the storm, unflinching. His voice was clear, his orders sharp. He did not falter. He carried the fire for all of them. In that moment, Zyra understood. His aggression was not madness, it was responsibility. He bore it so others could survive. Another blast rocked the ship. A crew member fell near her, injured, blood on his forehead. He groaned in pain, reaching weakly for help. Without thinking, Zyra dropped to his side. Her hands, usually trained for writing treaties and signing documents, now pressed against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. The man looked up at her in shock, then relief. "Hold on," she whispered. "You'll live." Her heart pounded. This was not diplomacy. This was survival. And she was no longer only watching. She was part of it. The ship shook again, harder, this time. An explosion burst from a panel near the weapons station. The officer there collapsed unconscious. The weapons console went dark. Aric turned sharply. "We've lost weapons control." Without thinking, Zyra rose. She moved to the console, her hands hovering uncertainly. "Ambassador," Aric barked. "That's not your place." But Zyra's voice was steady now. "If I do nothing, we all die. Tell me what to do." For a brief moment his eyes locked with hers. Fire met fire. Then he gave a single nod. "Follow my voice." She obeyed. His commands guided her hands across the controls, strange symbols flashing beneath her fingers. The console sparked, but slowly the weapons came back online. "Fire!" Aric commanded. Zyra pressed the trigger, and the ship's cannons roared. Light streaked across the darkness, striking an enemy vessel. It exploded in flames. The deck cheered, but Zyra stood frozen, her chest heaving. She had fired a weapon. She had joined the aggression. Her hands trembled, but her heart blazed. She understood now what Aric had meant. Aggression was not only rage. It was courage. It was the choice to act when inaction meant death. Aric's hand touched her shoulder, steady and strong. "You chose well," he said. Her eyes lifted to his, and for the first time she felt no fear in his fire. Instead, she felt drawn to it. The battle still raged outside, enemy ships circling like wolves. But inside her, a new battle had begun, between the diplomat she was trained to be and the warrior she was becoming. And in the middle of that war inside her heart, she realized something even more dangerous. She did not want to walk away from Aric's fire. She wanted to stand in it with him, understanding and love. The enemy fleet was gone. What remained of them drifted silently in the void, broken ships burning like dying stars. The battlefield had turned to wreckage, the silence after chaos heavy and strange. Inside the ship, the crew worked quietly now. Some carried the wounded to medical bays, others repaired damaged panels. Their faces showed exhaustion, but also pride. They had survived what should have destroyed them. Zyra stood near the window, her silver cloak torn, her hands still trembling from what she had done. She had touched blood. She had fired weapons. She had chosen battle. And though fear still lingered in her chest, something else pulsed stronger, a strange, fierce pride. She turned when she felt him. Aric entered the deck, his uniform scorched, his steps heavy but steady. The scar on his cheek glowed red in the light of broken panels. He carried himself not as a man untouched by danger, but as one who had embraced it and carried others through. And the first time, Zyra did not see only aggression in him. She saw sacrifice. "Ambassador," he said, his voice rough but steady. "You fought today." Her throat tightened. I never thought I would. My people would call me broken now." Aric stepped closer, his eyes fixed on hers. "You're not broken. You're stronger than you were yesterday." His words cut through her like fire through ice. She wanted to deny them, to cling to her old beliefs. Yet deep inside, she knew he was right. Something inside her had changed. She looked down at her trembling hands. "I felt it," she whispered. "That fire you spoke of. At first it terrified me. But when I used it, it gave me strength." Aric studied her silently, then gave a faint nod. "That's what it means to be human. We don't run from fire. We use it." Zyra lifted her gaze to him. "But isn't it dangerous? To carry such fire always?" "It is," he admitted. His eyes softened, just a little. "That's why we don't carry it alone. We fight for each other. That's how we survive." His words stirred something warm in her chest. She thought of the crew, shouting, cheering, standing side by side in the storm. She thought of Aric himself, his voice steady, his presence unshakable. She had thought aggression was madness. Now she saw it was love, expressed through courage. Her breath caught as the truth settled inside her. She had not only learned about humans, she had fallen for one. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the low hum of the ship. Then Aric stepped closer. His hand, rough and scarred, rested gently on her arm. It was not command, not force. It was steady, grounding. "You don't have to be afraid of it anymore," he said softly. Zyra's heart raced. She had faced death, fire, and fear, but this moment frightened her most. Not because of danger, but because of what she felt. Her lips parted. "And if I don't fear it, what then?" Aric's gaze held hers, unblinking. "Then you've taken your first step into our world." Something inside her broke, but not with pain, with release. The chains of her training, the laws of her people, the belief that peace could only come through silence, all of it shattered. She reached out, her hand trembling as it touched his scarred cheek. "You carry the fire," she whispered. "And now, so do I." For the first time, his hard expression softened into something gentler. His hand covered hers, warm and strong. The deck was quiet, the crew giving them space. Outside the window, stars burned silently, ancient witnesses to something new being born. In that moment, Zyra finally understood. Aggression was not only destruction, it was will, it was passion, it was love in its fiercest form. And in Captain Aric's fire, she had found not only understanding but her own heart. She leaned closer, her forehead touching his. The diplomat who once feared humanity's madness had fallen for the one man who embodied it most. And she knew she would never return to her old life unchanged, for in the fire of battle she had discovered both humanity and love.